Welcome to the AW Confidential podcast. Today's guest is a former professional football player, best-selling author of books like Finding Our Lost Kings, Hello King, Claim Your Throne, and Letters to a Young Queen. He is also a marriage and family therapist, and we will get into how that part of his journey began. I call it a second act. He is an international speaker and has used his platform to help others heal. His Just Heal Bro Tour has opened up authentic conversations about self worth, validation, trauma, self love, and healing, with a major focus on our Black and Brown men in our communities. Welcome, Jay Barnett.
All
How are
right. Thank
you?
you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Miss Yvette.
Well, I want to thank you. And, we had a brief conversation before we hopped on this, what is going to be an amazing conversation. Thank you not only for being here, but for all the amazing work you're doing. I'm, I'm humbled to uh, have you on the platform and share, your story with us.
Yeah.
Now, you are an ex-pro ball player.
hmm
I'm a fan of football. You decided once that chapter was over to go to grad school, become a mental health therapist. You played one of the toughest games ever, you know,
Yeah.
mentally, physically, it's a tough game. And I mean, in my opinion, it's also a game of, I don't know, it symbolizes strength, masculinity, and you go and do this 360. And many would call that brave, living, your truth, what you want to do. Now, I know your story. I have heard endless interviews and, you've inspired me. Can you share with those listeners that might not know um, your story? Maybe talk about, I would say, how this part of your journey, which I call a second act because I'm in my
hmm
second act,
Yeah.
how this journey started and what was that defining moment that brought you here?
Thank you again, Yvette, for having me. For me, that defining moment really came after my second suicide attempt. And as I've shared on many platforms, leaving the football arena and leaving a game that I love, leaving a game that I found great solitude in and found a lot of freedom because I think many times for Black and brown boys, sports become a way for us to evade uh, just the reality of what our surroundings and what our environment is. It becomes a space of freedom, a space of coping, a space of, you know, a safe haven of some sort. And that's what football was for me. It was a safe haven. I had camaraderie, I had brotherhood, friendship, even father figures through the coaches. And when football ended for me, as it does, for every athlete, right? Because we all have that view on life that we are invincible. That we're going to play this game forever. Because when you're young, you don't think about aging, you don't think about injuries. You just think about, man, I'm just trying to get to the league. I'm just trying to play. I'm just trying to do my thing. That's the only thing on your mind. And so when that ended for me, it left me in a very desolate place. Left me in a very unusual place because for the first time in life, I I didn't have any belonging. Should I say I didn't have anywhere I fit. And for many athletes outside of the sports arena and the environment and the sports atmosphere, we don't belong in the real world. And that's how you feel because as an athlete, you are very disciplined, you're very resilient, you're committed, and the average person don't understand what it's like to go through vigorous training, to change your eating habits, to be working out 2 and 3 times a day. You got to sleep. They don't understand that. So that level of commitment is a bit abnormal for the regular everyday person. And after my second suicide attempt, my godmother discovered me because I was missing like for a day under the bed, and it was one of those things where my thought as I'm taking these pills is I don't want to wake up, and I'm okay with that. Whenever people are not just suicidal, but when they are in the process of planning their suicide, it's different because now you've made peace with the outcome. And I had made peace with that outcome. I spoke to my mother, I spoke to my father. So I was okay with knowing that I was going to leave everybody behind because I was just wanting to end the pain. But the only way to end the pain is I have to end my life. And for most of us that have struggled, or those who do struggle with suicide ideation, they're not really trying to take their life. They're just trying to end the pain. But the thought is, I end my life, I end the pain. So uh, there's that, twofold dynamic there. And I survived. And after surviving, that's when I realized, okay, God had a purpose for my life. God had something more for me to do because so many stories I've heard, even as a therapist, so many stories of parents that I've worked with that the kids have succeeded. And so when I look at it, that there's a great appreciation for life that I have now. And as you said, and I love that, as I'm in this second act, I discovered that I had this unique gift of connecting people with language that I had never heard, even when I began to go to therapy, because many times as a therapist, you can become very technical, you can become
Detached.
you could become detached, and you could become so caught up in your heuristics of what you've learned and what you study, because everything, most of the stuff that we practice is evidence based and theoretically, that you forget to meet the person on the level that they are with the language. And so I realized that I had a gift to not only understand but also communicate. And I discovered this through grad school. And it was one of those things where I began working with kids because I love working with teenagers. I was working with kids in group homes. And my reasons for working with these kids, because I was healing. I was giving them a part of me, that giving them something that I desired that I'd never had. And I'd never had support. I had major abandonment issues from my father. I never had somebody just take me under their wing and said, I'm going to help guide you through this thing called life.
As you can see
Yeah.
it, thank you so much for sharing. I have listened to the story, and just being in front of you, I
Hmm.
appreciate your vulnerability. So thank you for that. Now, I've gone through my own journey of healing, and oof, I've learned a lot, and I know there's so much more to go. And you sort of hit the nail on the head. One of the most powerful ways that we can help others is to share our story. And that's why you do what you do. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And Brene Brown, which I love, I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
you've
love
seen
her.
her talk.
Oh yeah, I love her talk on
I,
vulnerability. I give a lot of clients that video to watch for homework.
you beat me to it. When I was in therapy, my therapist asked me to read her Gifts of Imperfection book, which it was a saving grace, and watch
Hmm.
her TED Talk. Guys, go watch it. She has something also on Netflix that, oof, powerful. But I was listening to her the other day, and this quote, I'm all about quotes. She
Mm-hmm.
said, "You own your story. Your story does not own you."
Mm-hmm.
And you have done that. I have done that. And you've done it with such vulnerability and such grace. And it is powerful. It really is. And I remember when I sat down to write my first book, I was in the midst of a depression, and I was working through it with a therapist, but it took years for me to
Mm-hmm.
deal with generational trauma, my own personal trauma. There was a lot to unpack.
Right.
And one of the toughest subjects to write about for me was my depression. What has been for you the toughest topic to tackle? Because it's a lot. As a human being, it's a lot.
Um, I think for me, probably the toughest part was really just dealing with when I first started sharing my story with the family, because I had a very prideful family, uh, and I grew up in the South where what goes on in this house stays in this house. So that was the toughest part for me, is dealing with the backlash. The toughest part was not just talking about my truth, but having it to be respected, because the family image and the family, perspective, you know, where it was, you know, why are you talking about things that went on in the household, and why are you talking about those things? So that was the toughest part. And I think for many people out there that are listening, the challenge is oftentimes is how they're going to be viewed by family members. And that sort of dictates how they view themselves, because if you feel like you have spilled the beans, you now feel responsible, and now you feel like you're held accountable for this secret. But the secret was destroying you. The secret was poisoning you. And once I got beyond that, I experienced this level of freedom. And I think that you begin to pursue what you're needing from releasing the story. And for me, what I was needing was the freedom to be. And so if you pursue the freedom, you distance yourself from the bondage and from taking on the weight of how they feel. Because see, how they feel can't free you. How they feel will only keep you in bondage even deeper. And I truly believe you're only as sane as your secrets. And so for me, I needed my saneness. I wanted to release this image that as a Barnett, you go and be a pro athlete. That was his thing. We go play ball. And I'm like, yeah, but we got issues. Yeah, all of these men are struggling, with being faithful and all those different things. So it was all of this dysfunction in the midst of hiding under this umbrella of being a great athlete. But who cares if you're a great athlete if your character is poor, and if you're not a great father, if you're not, a great listener to your children. So once I got beyond that, it was almost like I broke out of a tackle and nobody could catch me. And that's what I hope people are able to take away from this, that rather than falling uh, into the trap of how they feel, you have to fall in love to what you're pursuing. And hopefully you're pursuing is the freedom in sharing your story. I didn't mean to go there,
I
Sister.
remember. I no, I just I remember, growing up even into adulthood, what happens at home stays at home. And
Hmm.
it's like something that eats away at you, just moment by moment, year by year. And I don't think you realize at the other side of that, at the other end of that, it's almost like, I don't mean to get gross, but when those I can't remember, but those, is it a micro, or it's when something eats away at your flesh, literally
Hmm.
that. I can imagine that's how it feels.
Yep.
So no, I completely understand. And it is worth it. That freedom is absolutely worth it.
Yeah.
Um I think, this journey is I want to call it self-improvement. It's ongoing. It never stops.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is managing our mental health, or at least it should be part of, self-care and just getting better. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, I had a very impactful episode of depression. Now I get the blues now and then, but I know when it's coming. I know the onset, and I know, you know, when it's sort of creeping its head, and I could, do the meditation, go out with friends, schedule a therapy appointment. So I make sure to check in with myself
Mm.
regularly,
Yeah.
and I pay more attention to my mind, my spirit, as I become more aware and accepting of my trauma and deal with, you know, all these, I keep calling them generational curses because I do believe we have passed on generations of it. And I am grateful that I was able to break that cycle. But in your opinion, for those family members or partners that are listening and that have, people that in their lives that are going through this emotional mess, um, how can they be of support to someone going through a time when, their mental health is being challenged? And after COVID, I think it's become exacerbated for sure.
Oh yeah, it most definitely has become it has been exacerbated in a great deal because I think for many generations we focus on being successful but not being healthy people. We focus on getting the bag but not securing the real bag, which is your mental health, because your mental health determines your quality of life, or should I say the state of your mental health determines the quality of life that you have. Because what we saw over the past couple of years, we saw people who, quote unquote, had everything as the tangible, but they lack a lot of the intangibles that stabilize your mental, emotional, and physical capacity. Because when we are so fixated on looking well, but not living well, we have an issue. And for those that are in this space that are wanting to support, I would say the key thing that we have really failed as people is being a good listener, actively listen. We often don't listen beyond what we don't agree with. And we all have been, either the person who didn't listen or the person who needed someone to listen to. And so, and then a lot of times, listening doesn't require a solution. Sometimes listening is just holding space. And holding space allows for this person to process, to feel, to emote, to vomit, you know, uh, to unearth, to decompress, to debrief. So many different variations of holding space for somebody. Because see, you can create space for a person, but if you don't know how to hold that space, then the space no longer feels safe. So we don't we hearing all safe space. But okay, now this okay, it's a safe space, but can you hold the space? Can you hold the safe in the space? And that becomes a process of saying, I'll walk with you, I'll stand with you. We like to call that in the clinical is we begin to collaborate. It's a collaborative effort that I'm going to walk with you on this journey. And many times we don't understand what walking with somebody on the journey because many of us have stood alone. Many of us have stood in our abandonment while waiting for somebody to come and help us or save us or rescue us. And it's hard to stand with somebody when you feel like no one is standing for you because standing for them, you often feel like you're being cheated. Because you say nobody stood with me. Why would I stand with them? Nobody held space for them. For me, why would I hold space for them? So it's so layered. And when we can understand the complexity or the complex layers that we have as human beings, it allows us to begin to remove the expectations that you should be this way, you should know, and you should not have this issue. You have a degree. Why are you struggling with this? You make six figures. I can't believe you're struggling with your self esteem. We are complex. And the complexity is that we have worked so much on our external and done very little in our internal. So again, you got me. I feel like I'm teaching a life class today. Ooh,
I'm
Lord,
almost done. I'm almost done.
no, this is
So
good.
one of the biggest lessons I've learned, and like I said, I'm a student. I am a student and
Hmm.
I'm in this class and I have so many teachers. But one of the things that I've learned, and this is so important for everyone to absorb,
Hmm.
for myself, I know now that I can't have a healthy relationship with anyone until I work on the relationship with myself. I need to be good on my own first. What has been the biggest lesson you've taken from your journey so far? And I know there's so many.
So it. So I want to add to what you said. Um, I like to look at that two ways because you cannot grow without the place of having somebody to challenge your growth. And while it's important to have a healthy relationship with yourself, but you can develop a healthy relationship in the course of building a relationship with people outside of yourself. So when again, when you take that on, it becomes independent. But in order to build with others, and it's not just in a loving relationship, whether it's platonic, whether it's business, whether it's partnering, you have to understand interdependence. Is that part of my growth as a human being is also being able to relate and connect with others. So while we are bettering ourselves, we cannot omit from engaging to get better with others because it takes practice. And so what you see is a lot of people who will go and they'll do healing by themselves and then they insert themselves back into a situation where it includes people and they're failing again and they feel like their healing doesn't work. It's not that your healing doesn't work. You need to have somebody to help you foster into different facets of your healing as you're on your journey. So what I've learned is that on my journey, building a healthy relationship with myself, it's also challenging myself to build relationships in ways that I've never had to build. So becoming open, asking for help. Because as I'm learning to ask for help from others when I normally don't ask for help, it's also building me inwardly to have confidence to be okay when I don't know what to do. So,
Oof. I had to learn that, by the way. I did.
and
I
so,
had to learn to.
yeah, so there's a parallel to it. So it has to walk hand in hand. As I'm working to become a healthy person, I also have to work at creating healthy relationships. I cannot just say I don't. I'm just going to go get myself healthy, but I have no experience or I have no understanding. How do I develop that? Because see, when you're healing by yourself, I find that very dangerous because you can't heal by yourself without the support of a community, without the support of a person or persons that will allow you to not identify what's wrong, but also identify the areas that you're growing in. That's why trainers have you do check-ins. Okay, let's check your weight. 2 weeks ago you weighed this. Let's see what you weigh today. You have to have check-ins. And that's the thing. You cannot take this journey alone. And I think that's the issue that people are like, oh, let me just go off and go heal. You cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone.
Love that. I
So
love that. Thank you for that reminder. And yes, I have learned to ask for help. And being vulnerable and asking for that help is, you're right. It has to be done and it's really hard. It's really hard. But at the end of the day, it's something that I've recognized that I also need. So it's
Yeah.
having that balance.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard you say, and you have so many great quotes. If you don't change your life, it will change you. And the man who finds his voice finds his way. I truly connected with these quotes because I I think I'm arriving at a place where, I'm not afraid to ask myself or others the hard questions, and and at the same time I'm not afraid to listen to the answers. And the answers, I'd say most of the time, is probably not what I want to hear, but I'm not afraid anymore. And creating this platform to help others has been it's been my way, not just of sharing my voice and speaking out, but it's also, I think, my way of being of service and giving back in some way. So, where are you in your journey, and what do you hope that Just Heal Bro will do for our community?
Well, I'll say this. What I'm hoping for is actually happening. So Just Heal Bro is healing men from all walks of life. Just Heal Bro is impacting the lives of so many young
And
men
women,
and women. Yes,
for
and
me.
women. Yes, and women. And so we do have a Just Heal Sis tour coming next year. And so after I complete the Just Heal Sis book, but what it's doing is it is not only my service and my purpose, it is also my mission. I think to understand legacy is to understand your mission. And when you understand your mission, you can begin to work in your legacy. And that's what I'm doing is to build a generation of men who are holistically whole, who are spiritually stable, who are mentally sound and physically equipped, and so those areas that I am working and through my own journey, because as we're helping people heal, we still get to see parts of us that need to be healed. And it's okay. And because every time you reach a different, I made 40 this year. And so I'm understanding that what my body did at 30 can't do at 40. But at 40, I'm able to do things that my body can do at 30. So there is this unique nuance about growing. And I think once we commit to personal growth and commit to a constant journey of developing and perfecting. I'm not looking to be perfect, but I can be perfecting, and perfecting to me means that you are continuously working toward, and that's what it's really about. And so my journey and of helping men and across this globe is to really allow men to see beyond the pain, because there's so many men that have experienced so much pain, and the pain has been carried out on their children, been carried out on their spouses, on their family members. Because a guy DM'd me this morning and he said, and this really blessed me, he says, man, nothing has never been created for men. He said, we've been forgotten about emotionally. Everybody's tapped in on what we could do physically, right? You see that on television. How long do you want to go? Do you want to be on all nighter? Here's a pill for that, right? They have a pill for everything. And so this programs us to be concerned about performance rather than living. So I want guys to be concerned about living rather than performance. And the man who finds his voice, meaning that you're able to find you. You find you, you find your way. So, but I
Oof.
hope this has blessed, somebody that is listening.
I have no doubt. And one of the things that I love to do towards the end of the interview is leave it on a positive note. And I know
Yeah.
that we've discussed topics that can be really difficult, but the way I see it, these interviews are meant to bring light into people's lives. I've gone from darkness to light and I want to inspire as many people as I can. So I do know that there are three things for me that help me get there. And I'll sort of wrap it up with this. For me, the three things that have helped me get to where I am today, and I have a lot to go, are acknowledgement, pain, trauma, mistakes, forgiveness for myself and for those who hurt me, and acceptance, what has happened, my past, my worth, and knowing that I am enough. What three things have gotten you to this point of your, I call it, and enlightened path?
I would say for me is operating in a level of gratitude, and I have to start with gratitude because I am a two-time suicide survivor, and so my gratitude is that there's an appreciation for life that I have now that I've never had. There's an appreciation for the moments, and most of the time we don't think about the moments because we're so concerned about the uh, the bigger picture. And I'm learning that the moments are important. The moments leads to the bigger picture. And the gratitude is operating out of a space of just where you're grateful, even for the things that have happened. And though they could have broke you, they didn't. Though it could have killed you, but it didn't. Though it could have stopped you, but it didn't. It's being able to operate in a space that I am still here. And if you're still here, there's still another chance. That's one. Secondly, I would say identity, identifying yourself beyond your pain. Identity is what you were created for, right? What was the purpose of your existence? What is that image, that likeness? What is that overall view of who you are beyond everything that you've experienced, beyond what they've said, beyond what they've done. And that allowed me to move into purpose because when you have gratitude, you're able to identify yourself from the things that you need rather than the things that you want. Because the things that I need, I can't live without. And through that, I can fall in love with whatever my passion is, whatever that thing is, and purpose won't always be something that we benefit from financially. We won't always be able to monetize purpose. Sometimes the purpose may be at your daily job, you get to embrace people that are underserved, the disenfranchised, people that operate at a lower level than you. Maybe your purpose is you get to help people smile. You get to say something nice to people that change their lives. Purpose is always centered around where did you experience your greatest pain, but now you're able to experience your greatest joy. And so that joy in finding what you're here for allows you to have a sense of identity, and then you can be able to operate from a place of gratitude. So hopefully, I, that makes sense to how I connected though.
Does. It does. Oof. Man, Jay, I can talk to you for hours. I don't say that all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
I had a hard time narrowing this down, and I am just filled with gratitude today.
yeah.
Please tell our listeners, because I know they'll be looking for you, how they can find you. Just Heal Bro Tour. Please share.
Yes, you can find me on all social media platforms, King J Barnett, and that's all one word. And you can follow the Just Heal Bro Tour at justheal.co, justheal.co, justheal.co. And pass the message on, pass the books on. The book Just Heal Bro Journal is available on Amazon, along with my other books, Letters to a Young Queen, Hello King, Finding Our Lost Kings and Queens, and uh, December, we'll be releasing Just Heal Sis. So all of
And we
my
can't wait.
material, yes, so I'm excited about this. So, and thank you for having me today. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for joining us on this very special episode of the AW Confidential podcast. Stay healthy.